Have you ever wondered what it's like to be an Alabama fan living in Tennessee? We're going to talk to one. Let's do it right now.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. And in the box below us is one Twitter legend, Allie Collum. Allie, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you guys?
Just doing ducky. You have, again, made this the best hair podcast so far. We appreciate you so much for joining us. Allie, for those who don't know, and for those who don't have Twitter, Allie is an moderately recent Alabama graduate, and she's living in Nashville, and she's got a music career, and she's just popular. She's just a big deal. And one thing that I love about social media and doing a podcast like this is we can meet up with different folks and talk to Alabama fans who are living in Tennessee country, for instance. And that's what Allie is doing in Nashville. So, Allie, if you want to just introduce yourself really quickly, I'd appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for the moderately. I graduated, it should have been 2014, but I stayed through 2015 at Alabama. I was a Zeta there. I loved it. I worked briefly for the athletic program, mostly with baseball, and then moved to Nashville about 7 years ago. And I have 2 songs out, and I'm working on releasing some more, hopefully in the spring. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's awesome. And you are a gigantic Alabama fan like we are, and like anybody who listens to this podcast. Yeah. So, okay. Allie, first of all, I got to do this to you, and it's not going to show up right because Jimmy and I are not tech wizards, but you do have one of the greatest photos in the history of Al Gore's internet. This is perfect. You doing the John Mechie Crane. That's one of my favorite photos, and it's perfect. I was at that game too. I felt like doing that myself. I didn't pull it off quite as well as you, but you look fantastic doing that.
Thank you. I never made it to my seat that game. I stayed right there in that little area of the field.
Well, look, let's get into it. Talk a little bit about, go ahead and talk about your living in Tennessee for the last several years and how it's been in terms of this rivalry.
So relatively easy in the last 7 years that I've been there, but I think the tried and true Tennessee fans, their fan base is extremely loyal, no matter how, I won't say non-competitive, but less competitive they've been the last couple of years. I think I moved there in 2015, and we always do, my family does like a mountain trip the week of the game. So usually I get out of Nashville relatively early this week, but it is hostile this year. They are ready to roll, and their fan base is always pretty loyal, like I said, but they are on another level right now.
Yeah, I've definitely picked up on that myself, especially on Twitter. Their fans, I've gotten more trash talked at me, and I don't start that. I mean, all I do is I've printed some facts about where Tennessee ranks nationally and some statistics in Alabama, and then I get attacked. That has not happened in certainly the last 10 or 12 years in Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. They've been a little more quiet. This year, they're talking. It's like the Georgia rivalry a little bit. I mean, all of a sudden they're Georgia, and hey, they're a very good football team. There's no question. I think this is the best Tennessee team during the entire 15-year streak. But I hope for their sake, their players are as confident as their fans are.
I know. I mean, I said earlier this morning that I felt the way that I felt going into the Georgia game for SEC championship last year is the way I feel right now. And I'm like, I hope we have the same result this week. But it has been, I mean, yesterday I lived downtown Nashville, and I was walking around yesterday morning, and I made sure I have this big sweatshirt that has the Alabama crest on it, and it has alumni. And I walked around in it yesterday morning, and I was just like observing. And I got some pretty nasty looks. But, I mean, I love to stir that up. So I made sure I was wearing Alabama stuff. And then my nickname is Alabama, so my car tag says it on the back.
Good.
And we were driving to the mountains yesterday, and I got plenty of thumbs down and other hand gestures on the way here.
That nickname is so much better than any of the nicknames Jimmy and I have, by the way.
That's true.
Yeah. Usually ours are defendant.
But like the history with Alabama, Tennessee, and I grew up an Alabama fan, so this was always our favorite road trip. I mean, my parents took us to games from the time we could walk, really, and this one's always been fun. So I've sat through a couple of losses in Knoxville. I'm glad to have that back. I mean, we've been playing murder ball for so long, and I'll never complain about that. I love to beat everyone 55-0 if we can, but this has been fun because the history goes back so deep with Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, even back to Coach Bryant's days, that it's fun to have the banter back between the two, and like they actually have somewhat something to back it up with. I don't think they will after Saturday, but.
So, well, let me ask this: as I mean, you've been at Alabama much more lately than Jimmy and I have as a student. So, in that time, and you obviously talk to folks that are a lot younger. I'm just curious how your generation looks at the Tennessee-Alabama rivalry, because for Jimmy and me, Tennessee's always been kind of a deal. Now, it's always been a rivalry based on streaks, and you know the history, so you know that's true too. But you guys, your generation, doesn't know anything about losing to them. You have no idea. So, I mean, this whole idea of losing to Tennessee has got to be so incredibly foreign to you. But I'm just curious, do you guys look at it as a true rivalry, or is the fact that this game coming up is so big and a top 10 showdown, is that just completely foreign to you?
So I think it's funny. I grew up an Alabama fan, so I know Peyton Manning. I know that we absolutely hated Tennessee. They sang our fight song to us, and I guess they're planning on doing that Saturday. Don't know how well that'll go over, but I was familiar with all of that. So when I went to college, we hated Tennessee always. Auburn was always the same way, just in a different way. And then Georgia got competitive. LSU got competitive. When we played LSU, I think my generation felt how the generation before us felt about Tennessee when I was in school. So unless you grew up a fan, my generation didn't grasp that. I mean, a lot of like the guys whose dads went to Bama and then they went to Bama, my parents went to Bama, I went to Bama, so I knew. But if you didn't grow up an Alabama fan, which I was there 2010 to 2015, so that's when we really started expanding as a school, and it wasn't just kids coming from Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee. It's Alabama mixed with Southeast, mixed with Florida. I have friends from New York. Tons of New Yorkers were coming to Bama when I was in school. So they didn't get it, but we did.
All right, guys.
We try our best to teach.
Go ahead. I got to tell everybody about BetOnline. BetOnline is where you want to go to get that bet in. It is just absolutely the best place to put your bet in. BetOnline is your number one source for all football betting this season, all info, whatever it is, Major League Baseball playoffs are going off. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information. Anything you need, you can find it at betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, golf, football, college football, NFL, cricket, I think. I mean, I'm sure you can do cricket. I haven't checked, but I'm sure you can if you're into that. Head to betonline.net, use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. I have to do it very dramatic like that too.
When it comes to betting on cricket, I always bet on the fish. The fish is going to win.
That is. By the way, apropos of nothing, I grew up on Lake Martin here in Alexander City. I don't fish. I once very famously hooked a catfish in the eye. That's how bad of a fisherman I am. Even the catfish was like, "What in the world?" But so did y'all see the story about the two fishermen who were loading the fish with lead weights during the weigh-in to win?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's bananas, man. That's Hugh Freeze level cheating in fishing.
I didn't know it was that serious.
There's a lot of money out there.
And then I found out what people made.
Yeah. Let me tell you, the people I will not screw over is dudes who fish for a living. Those are guys who will beat you senseless.
I didn't know you could make that kind of money fishing.
Well,
didn't
you
either.
have to load up. See, fish don't weigh much. They're very thin because they only eat fish.
Well, they're always moving. Swimming does make, it's a great exercise.
Yeah, constant
All right,
exercise.
let's talk about the game. Allie, what are your thoughts if let's pretend like Bryce Young won't play? I think Bryce Young will play. I think Jimmy agrees Bryce Young will play. I bet you agree Bryce Young will play. Let's pretend like
I do.
Bryce Young doesn't play. How do you feel?
If he doesn't play,
I feel if Milrow is in, I don't feel, I mean, a little less confident, but I don't feel like we're going to lose. I think it's going to be a closer game. I think our defense will play a huge part in the game. I think having Will Anderson and Dallas Turner at their best of their best is important to us. It's tough, but I think everyone's focusing on Coach Saban's smart. He knows everyone's focusing on if Bryce is going to play, if Jalen's going to play, what's going to happen. He's done this before. We're going to have a different game plan. Do I feel better with Bryce playing because of the environment? I think people forget how hostile it is to play in Neyland Stadium because they've been terrible the last few years, at least in our game. It is a ugly, loud place to play. I hope that doesn't faze him if Jalen has to play.
Jimmy, what do you think?
Yeah, with what Ali said, I feel like Bryce Young gives Alabama their best chance to win. Of course it does. You have to be more confident with Bryce out there, even a lesser Bryce. I think that's one thing. The discussion all week, Luke and Ali, has been, is Bryce going to play? I think a bigger question is, if Bryce does play as we expect, what Bryce are we getting? It's not fair to assume that Bryce will be 100% or play up to the standard that he showed us over the past year and a half. There's going to be, to some extent, a lesser Bryce. I think that's inevitable. Now, can Alabama beat Tennessee with a lesser Bryce? Of course. I think Alabama could win with Jalen Milrow. And we have to remember that Jalen Milrow also played against Arkansas. He led Alabama to 35 points on the road in a hostile environment in less than 4 quarters. And Tennessee's defense, frankly, is not really any better than Arkansas's. A&M has a better defense, I believe, than Arkansas or Tennessee. Jalen would likely be a little more comfortable in Game 3. So I don't rule out Milrow beating Tennessee. I don't say that if Bryce plays that means Alabama wins the game. Look, Bryce Young played. A healthy Bryce Young lost to Texas A&M a year ago. I mean, it's not crazy to think that that Alabama could fall short even with Bryce at quarterback. This is what happens when 2 top 10 teams play. I think it's going to be tight if Bryce plays. It will be tight if Milrow plays. And I think for fans of the old Alabama-Tennessee rivalry, this is going to be a 4th quarter game that's going to come down to which team makes a play at the end to win the game.
I would be much more scared of a Tennessee game. Sorry, of a Tennessee team that had nothing to lose right now. They have everything to lose. I think Coach Saban and our staff gets our guys very prepared for those kind of situations. I think the media has counted us out, and that's going to do nothing but work in our favor. And as much as the team tries not to participate in that, they use it as fuel. And Tennessee has everything to lose.
Did we overhype Milrow's performance against Arkansas, and now are we underhyping Jalen Milrow because he was tight as a tickle Matilda against Texas A&M?
I think so.
He's both guys, right? I mean, he's both. He's not the Jalen Milrow that played Texas A&M. He's not the Jalen Milrow that played Arkansas. He's both guys, and talented freshman. And of course, Jalen's talented. He wouldn't be there if he wasn't. Talented freshman. This is how they play. They show us how good they can be, and then they also show us they're probably not ready to be full-time starters. And that's, I think, where Milrow is in his game. There's going to be mistakes and errors. There's also going to be the spectacular. Bryce is going to give Alabama a more steady presence, probably fewer errors. But at the same time, with the shoulder issue, I'm not sure we'll see the same Bryce in terms of his ability to throw the ball downfield accurately and on time. He hasn't practiced a lot. Coach Saban says he's on a pitch count this week. That's going to affect his timing. So there's a lot of reasons for Alabama fans to be nervous, but in the end, I'm going to pick Alabama to win the game simply because I think Alabama has more good players than Tennessee does.
All right. So quarterback aside, who do each of you think will be the star of the game? I assume both of you pick Alabama to win. Jimmy, will save your actual prediction for tomorrow's podcast, but Allie will get yours in the next segment. But quarterback aside, who do you suspect will have either a breakout game or just a game that everybody goes, wow?
I'm a defense girl. So I'm kind of putting my pressure on Will and Dallas, but I'm also loving Gibbs. He's my favorite right now. And I just think, I think us not making mistakes, I think consistency, because for me, I go into every Alabama game super confident, usually in the last 10 years. Super confident. And now it's inconsistent. I'm uneasy. We haven't had, the Texas game, the A&M game, both have taken 20 years off my life equally. So I don't know who I'm putting my faith in right now. But I think it'll be a big game that we need to rely on our defense.
What's interesting about what you said is if those games took 20 years off Jimmy or my life, we would both be dead. Jimmy actually was a ghost in the previous podcast. Jimmy, can you pull up that background so she can see hologram Jimmy?
It was hard enough to get rid of it. Let's see. It's hard enough to let's see. Did this work? Hey,
yes, there you go.
That's so
now,
great.
if you see, Allie, if you can see Jimmy now, he is almost a spectral version of himself. It feels like he's covered in ectoplasm, does it not?
This is literally how I looked at
You look good. You look good.
It's literally how I looked at the end of A&M.
I love it.
The end of the A&M game.
I've never punched anything in my life, and I got too excited telling Jimbo to go home and accidentally punched the glass in front of me. So good thing we're not depending on me as the breakout star this weekend, because it wouldn't happen.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of Allie's favorite Alabama-Tennessee memories, and then I want to get her prediction and maybe let her tell you a little bit more about her music. All right, Allie, why don't you tell us your favorite? Have you been to Knoxville before? I'm sure you have.
I have. So it's always been my favorite road trip, other than I love going to Oxford. I love going to Baton Rouge. But my family's always turned this into like a little mountain weekend. So we do the mountains, and then we go to Knoxville on Saturday, and we have tailgated in the same church parking lot since I think my parents were dating.
Oh, wow.
So I love Knoxville. It's a great, great place. Everyone's always super nice. I sat through a very ugly game in Tuscaloosa where we went into 4 overtimes. And I had to have been in like the 5th grade. My favorite Alabama Tennessee memory would be my senior year of high school, Rocky Block. I was behind the goalpost, and I jumped into somebody's grandpa's arms. I don't know who he was. I hope he's doing great, still here, whatever. But I literally turned around and jumped into this man's arms when Terrence Cody blocked. That's got to be my favorite memory. And I think maybe Saturday will be, because I was too young to remember like a hostile environment in Neyland. Other than it's been that way, I guess, when I was in high school and college, like maybe for the first half. But not like it's going to be Saturday. You know, the third down for what is going to be crazy. It's going to be hard to hear. I joked with my friend and said, if we do happen to lose, I'll be taking the first helicopter out of there, or else I won't make it out. Because I was in Oxford when we lost to Ole Miss. It would have been my 5th year, so 2015, the first time they had beaten us in forever. And that was the worst moment of my life. I walked out of the library because I left the game early, and I don't usually leave games early. I'm pretty serious about it. And I walked out of the library, and I called my dad and I said, please come get me. I was like, I won't survive this. And he was like, no, you need to learn how to lose. And I was like, no, I don't need to learn how to lose. I was like, you don't get it. They've torn down the goalposts. because we had not experienced people celebrating beating us like that until then. I mean, when I was at school, we were spoiled. We maybe lost one game. I can remember the LSU game, game of the century. That was ugly. I went back to my room after that. People don't get it. We don't go out when we lose. So I think, but definitely Rocky Block was my favorite. And then I can't remember a hostile environment here. So I think Saturday is going to be pretty eye-opening.
I got to interject here and say, first of all, for Rocky Block, you say that you don't leave early. See, I'm notorious for leaving early. There's nothing, I'm so impatient. There's nothing worse to me than traffic. So when we got the ball, and I said, okay, we're just going to run the clock out. So I said, all right, see, I was by myself with my friends and I was just going to drive home. So I left. And as I'm walking down the corridor, I'm walking out the stadium, my buddy texted me and said, hey, Mark Ingram just fumbled. I was like, Mark Ingram never fumbles. What are you talking about? And then, of course, they get and I'm still walking to my car. I'm like, they got to get the onside kick. So I walk to my car, and I can't hear anything. There's no service, and all I can do is go by the noise of the crowd that something big happened. And so finally, I was able to get in touch with somebody. And anyway, that's that. But the other thing about leaving early, this is, I don't even know if I've ever told Jimmy this, in the Sac Brody game of 2005. Again, you were 4 years old, but
I was in the 7th grade and I remember it. And I remember the bumper stickers.
Well, my brother and I went to the game and we got there a little late, like right after kickoff. And we bought 2 tickets pretty cheap, honestly. And we walk in and we watched the first 2 drives. We'd just gotten Cokes and hot dogs and everything. And we sit down, we watched the first 2 drives with all these sacks, and it's 14-0 with about 7 minutes to go in the first quarter. And he looked at me and said, are you ready to go? And I said, I am. So we got no shot. So we left. We were there a total of 5 game minutes. And we left. And what's even funnier is my mom and father were invited to a box in Auburn, even though they're Alabama fans. And at halftime, not at halftime, excuse me, right at the beginning of the second quarter, my mom called me and said, are y'all ready to go? Let's go. And I said, Austin and I are already back in Alex City. We ate
left, Mom.
We ate lunch, made it back to my house in time to watch the end of halftime. I'm not scared to leave a bad movie, and I'm not scared to leave a game I think we're going to lose. So I'm just telling you.
So the only time I can remember feeling that way in Nick Saban era, we were in Santa Clara for the national championship.
Oh, yeah.
And I had already sat through the Tampa loss. I picked the purple confetti out of my hair, but I've always felt like we have a chance to win. Like no matter if we're down 3 touchdowns, I'm like, we'll be all right. We'll figure it out. I looked at my dad at halftime and I said, "There's no way." I was like, "There's no way. Everything is going wrong. There's no way." And that's the only time. Like we're so spoiled. That's the only time I felt that way.
Well, Allie, I want you to go ahead and give us your prediction for the game and then tell us a little bit more about your music if anybody wants to check it out.
Oh, my prediction is that it's going to be close. I think my predictions are different if Bryce is playing and if Jalen's playing. I think we beat them by 2 touchdowns with Bryce playing. And I would say we score at least 40 points. I could see it being like a 44 20-something game with Bryce playing. And if we get ahead early and we crush their momentum and their fans, because I think that's going to have the environment's going to have a lot to do with the game, especially with who's starting at quarterback. If not, I think it could come down to a field goal. Oh, I don't know. I'm so bad at predicting.
I'll be if it comes down to a field goal, I'll be a hologram again.
A little hologram.
After last weekend,
you brought up the game and getting ahead early. I think that's going to be crucial. I think you're right. Trying to take the crowd out of it. I will get you one more prediction from you. Number of times Gary Danielson says, I think they should review this for targeting on Alabama.
107.
107.
At least.
By the half and take the over.
For those who have to watch at home.
You can't play a drinking game when it comes to Gary Danielson saying stuff, or no one would survive the game.
I'm not going to say I haven't tried.
You're doing it right now.
I just mute the TV at that point.
All right. So tell us about your music really quickly. And how could people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I've got 2 songs out on Spotify, Apple Music, everything. I don't have like a stage name. It's Allie Collum. I'm working on right now a 4-song EP that I'm hoping to have out in the spring. COVID pushed stuff back for me, and then I released a song, my last one, last September. And I've just been working on. I want to release a full project this time, so I did that about 6 years ago. I cut a full EP, which is like 6 songs, and wasn't super involved in the process. I trusted someone with it. And so I had these 6 songs done. I'm going to release it. I got it back and it sounded like 90s karaoke and not in a good way. So I was like, I'm not going to release this. So I pretty much started from scratch with my same songs, but recording wise, started from scratch. And so I've released 2, and now I'm working on the full project again. So hopefully by the spring, but right now you can listen to the 2 songs I have out, on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your music.
Awesome. So you don't have a stage name. I mean, like Madonna or Pink or something. Have you thought about one like Alabama would be good, or Sabanette?
I mean, should I use Alabama? But then I cut out my Auburn and Tennessee fans, which I probably don't have much of. But
I think good music
those 2
transcends
fan bases
fandom.
on Twitter is tough.
Yeah. Good music transcends fandom, though. I mean, I think that's true.
I like
the
that.
Auburn fans have had some fun with my last song. It's called "Get Over That," and so I think it was during basketball season or something last year. Someone posted a meme of like me, and they were like, sounds like you need to get over that." And I was like, "All right, y'all are creative."
That's good. I think that you could do a whole list of songs based on just Alabama themed stuff. Just a song called
I could.
"Kickers Suck" or whatever. I mean, just
Well, that there's a country song that was just released called Tennessee Orange, and I sent it to my friend the last week of September, and I was like, all right, I love this song, I love this girl, I wish I had written it like Alabama version, but I was like, but this is the last week I can listen to it. I can't listen to it in October.
All right, guilty pleasure. The I Hate Alabama song is kind of catchy.
It's so good.
It's really good.
It's so good. I hate that it's good.
But you can't do I Hate Tennessee. Like, it only works because we've dominated it so much. You can't be like, I hate Mississippi State. You can't do that.
And I love that people hate us. I love that people hate us.
That means you win. No one hate. There's not a lot of Vanderbilt haters out there. You know what I mean? Alabama is the evil empire. Alabama's Darth Vader. I love all that stuff because it just means that Alabama wins every week and people are sick of it, and that's why that's out there. So I'm enjoying every second of it.
All right, Allie, thank you so much for joining us. You've been great. Really appreciate it. Have a blast this weekend.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and best of luck with your career. And guys, we will be back tomorrow with the prediction podcast. Until then, roll tide.
Roll tide.
Roll tide.